This is Saturn day, Jupiter hour, and we have ascendant 5 degrees Libra, with Venus strong in Libra, and a midheaven 5 degrees Cancer, with the moon on the anaretic degree, exactly square Pluto. So it's a tight square to Pluto, but a tight square to Pluto here is. Yeah, is actually putting the moon on in a yod in conjunction with both Uranus and Neptune. There's something special about this. 5 degrees is royal degree, and the topic of this particular one is about the charts of uh, public figures that I'll be looking at in the coming season or the coming year. And so anaretic degree is a great time to do it. And funnily enough, it's basically, I think, the third time that I'm looking at this. So we definitely are going to talk about the power of three. First chart, you all know. First chart is Donald Trump. Donald Trump natal chart. And you might be saying, why Donald Trump natal chart? I mean, yeah, there's the election, but Kamala Harris is kind of like a rising star with Rawi in her 10th house. Yes, this is true. However, when you have the planet of sexual liberation, wealth liberation, the Kundalini rise that liberates you on your dreams, people be listening. Yes, this is true. This is why Uranus transits are so powerful and so strong. Okay, sitting pretty with the planet that mostly notes for the traumas around the creation of what the Trudy Verstegen called the hermaphrodite. Okay, I don't have her natal chart. I'm not going to bug her with that. She's running from assassins without protection. But that would definitely be an interesting chart. Okay, so when you got Beta per se, which is basically about the wisdom and the psychic wisdom around the role of sexuality in wealth and the role of why do they rape people, would they torture people, but because they try to harvest the sexual energy of people at childhood when they're young, so that they can control for the secret societies, the secret cults, that they can control for their life path, for the life direction of the person, for what they would do. Okay, because when you sexually violate a person and they want to end it, they are willing to put the whole world through a nuclear holocaust because it's more humane than to keep perpetuating that. Okay, so Uranus conjoining Beta per se is a huge transit. It's 1939 to 1941. What did women get after the Second World War? The right to vote, a separate bank account. Okay, not anywhere near good, but definitely way more than they've had. Um, so when you put that on somebody's midheaven, that means that Donald Trump is destined to be liberated in some way. People are denoting of the off with his head or stuff like that. Yeah, Uranus rules also suicide, but also electricity and electric shocks. And Beta per se is the head, is wound to the face, and so on and so forth. We saw the assassination, and even though assassination is staged, he still doesn't know because of the nature of how they ordered the snuff movie. It's a snuff movie. We watched the snuff movie, and the actor doesn't know if he's going to get actually assassinated, what's going to happen. A lot of things that happen in the background that we're not exposed to, that we don't see. So that makes it real. Okay, that makes it moving. That makes it exciting. But the planet Uranus on Beta per se, on somebody's midheaven, is very, very powerful. And it's incredibly liberating. So yes, all of these doom and gloom things like the assassination, the this, the that, all these things that are true. But also, what's another truth here is that Trump might be able to reconnect with his life force, with his life energy, and liberate himself from a lot of misconceptions. A lot of the torture was done even from childhood. So that lies there as well. Uranus is shocking, the conjunction is hard aspect. But definitely Trump himself is going through a personal revolution publicly, and his Venus is in the first house. So this is a personal, internal revolution. It's also visible. I'll definitely be looking at Donald Trump for the coming seasons. Rao is still in his yeah. Yes, Rahu still is his ninth house of Aries, which Mars is again ruling is next to his ascendant. So he's having a fated worldview revolution, changing of the views of how he sees war, changing of the views of how he exerts of his strategies, and this is a lot fated. He's eclipse child. Okay, so I'll definitely be continuing to see what's going on. And then you're going to have Rao in the eighth house. Yeah, people think that it can be like lethal and so on. Transits to the eighth house can be lethal, but it can also be the place where you have changing of the way he manage assets. And while it's not so interesting for the public because it's not the exciting movie where he becomes a Van Gogh, okay, it's Van Gogh Museum. You gotta love Dutch. You can't get too angry in Netherlands because the language is just so funny. So um, and so it's not going to be looking exciting to us because eighth house is something that's hidden from the public eye. Um, and his Jupiter is in the second house. He's definitely be going to be changing the way he is doing business. And I think a lot of my teachings are going to be relevant for Mr. Trump because when the economy is based on the cult of betrayal, then he knows he can't trust like anybody from the cult because they are based on betrayal. Our economy, and that pertains to marriages. And Mr. Trump was very pioneering in leading to contractual relations around marriage that allow for the separation of assets. Okay, maybe you may be thinking of it with over trickery, but he definitely did something nobody talked about before, and perhaps could have liberated a lot of men from certain notions. But the other side of the coin is the liberation of women and other genders, and for the eighth house to not be house of trauma and house of betrayal, you got to tend to abolishing for the cult of betrayal. Right now, Neptune is going through his eighth house. He had to surrender that a lot. And the ruler Jupiter is in his second house with Chiron. Again, Venus being here. Venus is in his 12th house. I'm sorry. Venus in his 12th house. So we talk about an internal personal revolution, but also change of worldview, change of a strategy, and change for anything around investments, debt, and so on and so forth. Now, because it's eclipse child, I don't know how it's going to work, and because it's kind of like what people call Hyoka or the townsfool, is playing a very spiritual role in his life where he's a catalyzer, and with the way we respond to him, he exposes the internal workings not just of United States but tribal society, and in his behavior that is downright satirical, and he seems to be taking this role very, very seriously. I would not underestimate the seriousness in which he takes a spiritual role on Earth. Um, but I would definitely be listening and seeing and exposing and internally looking, because we can't control for what Trump can do. He can't control for what he will do. What we can is, those of us with our points of interferences, is how do we respond. That's a very important chart. If when Rahu goes to Trump's 8th house, Uranus is still doing the back and forth on his midheaven. Okay, I know it's 2 degrees away. It's still on, It's going to be on for at least a year. And when it gets to his eighth house, you're not going to see it, but it's going to make money moves. It's going to affect the whole world. And I say money, I don't mean money. I mean resources. Okay. So this is a very liberating. It's not an easy transit. It was very liberating and is meant to release stagnant energy so that the economy would be updated up to speed and with more equity actually for women, the feminine, sexually. The best tip I would give to any person going through this is that the embrace of that which you deem feminine, that which you deem masculine, that which is non-conforming, that which is this, that which is that, okay? The embrace of that in your life. And you can decide, I like being more of the feminine, I like being more on this, I like being more on that. But the embrace of that in your life, and the fair treatment towards people, okay? The fair treatment towards people is the key to algo stuff, okay? It's the key to algo stuff. And it's the key to keeping up with the economy because the economy is going to do that anyway. I don't know what the role of Trump is in that because he's eclipse chart, so he might be going on the counter, okay? It's just like with the abortion rights that stirred up with the opposition. So I don't know which role is he going to play in that equation. But if there's any point of interference there, I would definitely say that that's the point of interference because it's going to make you way more effective for both business-wise, and you're going to have wealth and you're going to be enjoying wealth. You're going to have true success and so on and so forth. So definitely be looking at Donald Trump's chart. Now, the second chart that I've been already looking at, okay, before I get to the new charts that's been on, is something that I've been already looking at, and so actually I have it in my database, and I don't have houses for this one. The chart of yes. Okay. This is chart of Geert Wilders. So I think by now there's nobody who doesn't understand who is this person that I'm talking about. I'll bite the very Dutch name. And ignore the houses here because we don't have the houses. He didn't reply me to a request for like ascendant or something like that. I did receive information, but if I don't receive like concrete reply, then I don't say anything. Because that to me means like I didn't get his consent to talk about this. We definitely are going to be having more activations, especially as Ketu goes over his Mercury. Ketu over the Mercury here. Now, we've been hearing about him because of the Rahu in 19 degrees Aries. Okay, the moon degree here may differ. I predict is another degree. I'm not going to talk about that. But if you've seen water expands upon colon, you make 1 + 1, you understand what my prediction is. So definitely when Ketu is going to go over his Mercury, it's going to be purging things regarding his entire Virgo stellium here, which is Sun, Pluto, Uranus, and Venus in Virgo. So that means that Geert Wilders is going to be purging something. I may have my gut feeling as to what it might be. It will be very exciting if that is the case. But there's definitely a very meaningful ending, and this ending is around him acting more of what he desires, what he does want, and less esquiashing. So that's something that's already been happening, but that's another chart I will continue to see what will happen forward. And here it's around purging. Okay, so unlike let's say Kamala Harris, which is around Rahu, okay, where she's heading, this is a wild, oh my God, there's so much being purged right now. It's just going to make a path and make a way for a strategy. And he has his Mars next to Spica. So this is going to be a strategy that can very well be aligned with justice. You might have, He might receive his justice, or places he's been treated unjustly, or whatever this Virgo stellium here rules. He might receive more justice around this, and that can lead to a sense of prevailing. But the purging is also happening here. So Mars is ruling of Rahu in right now, and in natal chart is next to Spica. So this is where he got to be more visible, where he got his party to win, where he got the people to listen to him, and then now he has to separate from where he has been esquiashing, and this Mars is going to give him, yes, a lot of a lot of capacity to deal with courts, and that's also, by the way, around where the ascendant of the state of Israel is. To judge people that are in this position, you really have to go into the depth of the core of the issue and remove for the image of just and get to the core of the issue. This is why Mars in Libra is considered in detriment, because mostly what people look at as justice is an image of something. It is not the actual essence. Mars brings essence, and on Spica there is ability to create something that is right. I have no idea what it is. I have my own assessment of what this could be, and that would just be very interesting to follow. So it's just going to keep being on the news. We might not hear about him as much as we heard around Rahu, okay, around Rahu on his Jupiter, but it's definitely not a chart I would kind of let go of looking at. The next chart, before I'll go to another Dutch chart, is Kim Jong-un, okay, whom we know as Supreme Leader of North Korea. And I've already been analyzing for this chart, so there are episodes on each. And Kim Jong-un has his Pluto 29 degrees Libra, which means he's right now finalizing his Pluto square. Okay, he's 40 years old, he's finalizing his Pluto square, and 41 very likely. And this is a time in a person's life where they are asked to expand, okay, to purge their own. There's a crisis of expansion. Pluto is always a crisis that brings wealth, okay? It's not a crisis that sends you, okay, it brings wealth. That being said, it's about authenticity. So it's a crisis where you're asked to be authentic, and you go about, you don't really knowing how to do that. By the end of the transit, your authenticity has created a great impact in a very real way in your life, okay? And again, I don't have the houses here, but definitely North Korea is opening up. There's questions whether it's going to be a part of the BRICS, or maybe it already is a part of the BRICS. I think the news changed around. He has troops in Europe, which must tell you that he is connected. The country is opening up, and it's just going to be very fascinating to look at what is he doing. He's also his internal politics are now on the public view. Okay, just recently there was a big flu that killed a lot of people in North Korea, and he decided to slaughter 30 of his men. And this is now public. Okay, everybody sees Kim Jong-un, and everybody has their own say, and now he's no longer this isolated leader, has to vie for the attention of Hillary Clinton, but when he has a spy in his country, very likely, and beg her to take the spy, for which they disagree. And thank you, Julian Assange, for exposing the Hillary Clinton emails. I don't think that they're still on. Okay, he has to sign the Espionage Act, so you have to remove that. And so now Kim Jong-un is very, very openly discussed. He's given more legitimacy, and his moves are discussed. He really has to grow here into a worldly position And the also bigger competition, because as the world is going through a stage where it's like, will it be globalization? Will it be tribal society again? Will it be decentralized? What is going on? Now he is there, not isolated, but a part of where there's an arena where you have to compete and can also be annihilated. And then there is the public. Okay, if you close your country, let's talk about strategy. He has Mars 22-degree Aquarius, and when you close your entire country, it's becoming controlled. So you are inspiration to a lot of people who are willing to do that on a worldly level. On the other sense, you are already exerting power illegitimately. Okay, so you're losing the mandate over the monopoly over power, and United States played a lot of tricks with North Korea. If you hear survivors being people who managed to escape going to United States and vying for protection, so they're being used by intelligences to basically expose of North Korea. And people say, I didn't know that Kim Jong-un is fat. He thought we were taught that he's working so hard, but if there is a YouTube video with the hacked satellite of North Korea, and there is one, they see Kim Jong-un all day. Now, it wasn't that this woman lied because life is good in North Korea. No, it's because she's used by intelligence to fight against the Kim Jong-un, because her life depends on that. Otherwise, you go back to North Korea. Of course, she knew, because if you watch TV, and there's one channel, if she said there's one channel, all day propaganda. What is the propaganda? All day Kim Jong-un. All day you didn't know he was fat. Okay? But the American intelligence is using that against Kim Jong-un. And this is where, when you close the country, everybody that gets a little bit of footage has so much power over you, that because you exercised for this power, so there's going to be different ways in which Kim Jong-un will yield power. His Mars is lethal. It's a 22 Mars. And with that Mars, what the best thing you want to do, it's not going to be easy for him, but the best thing you want to do, and this Mars dot applies to trine Pluto, is actually to provide shelter for people who are in risk of being murdered by countries with leaders such as you were. Okay, that's the best remedy, it's the best charity, because it's direct Mars. Okay, I have retrograde Mars, so my best remedy is to prevention of political assassination, just how I tend to expendable children. But for him, it's direct Mars, is charity for people in risk of assassination, or people who escaped murder, and so on and so forth. Mars, because otherwise Mars here can be mass death, mass murder, and the Saturn, okay, mass murder of scientists, mass murder of this, and he's tempted to go for this route, but essentially that's we talk about Aquarius, so this is non-linear chaotic system, and you either can say, okay, I made peace with the fact that I'm going to get to a certain pinnacle and then be offed. But adaptability is very important, which is very difficult in a fixed sign. So that's a Pluto square of the century for me. And I'll definitely be watching what is going to be with Kim Jong-un, because he's definitely required to take standards at the time where we the people get the power to be with the people. So that is a really huge change, going from the face of tyranny for most of the world, that a lot of people admire. Okay, a lot of people are like, oh my God, he managed to control his country so hard, but it's just this exertion of power that loses the mandate over the legitimacy of the monopoly over power. And this is where the chaotic system goes to a certain threshold. And that threshold, either he transforms, he changes with the Pluto square and becomes a person who really yields power to the people rather than mass assassinate them on a global level, okay? Or he's going to be considered kind of like the British monarchy. He's going to go to a huge pinnacle, and then kind of like the French Revolution, it's the off with their heads. So, um, and it's not an eclipse child, okay? I think it's not an eclipse child. So there's a lot of points of intervention. Um, then that it would be very interesting to see what he transforms into. Pluto in Libra is Pluto that is capable and competent of having relational power dynamics that are indeed dynamic. It's capable of starting new things. And he has a Pluto square Venus. Venus is in Aquarius, so there is an internal tension within himself around power relations, power in women, equity to women, decentralized wealth that takes women into account. Like, it's not like he doesn't have it in him to completely transform. I don't know where this will go, and we'll have to watch where he's heading with that. So another chart that obviously following right now is head of natal chart, but also contributed to the agenda for 2030. And this is Mark Rutte, fascinating figure. That's a person, it's the kind of people you go to an ego that's just watching. And this is going to be very important to keep watching, to keep seeing. Now, with Rutte, there's another interesting thing. As Uranus perfects its bisextile with Pluto and Neptune, it's going to conjunct his midheaven, okay? And this is a fairly good chart, okay? We got fairly good ascendant. So it's reason to believe that's the midheaven. We indeed see kind of a personal revolution in the role of Mark Rutte. His Venus is 18 degrees Pisces. What it's given World Health Organization to me, but the World Economic Forum is what governs the World Health Organization, and uses that to yield power. Very potent Mars, 0 degree Scorpio. It's a very Marsy Mars, and it conjuncts the moon, which I talked about. So Aries was going over his moon, and Uranus over his midheaven, while Neptune is going over his Saturn after finishing a role with his Chiron, and Venus, Saturn going over his Venus, his Chiron, and then Saturn return, which is going to activate the natal chart of Pluto Uranus conjunction opposing Saturn. This man is invincible because his greatest critic is harshest restriction is within the self. Okay, if he wins at being every day, you can't do anything about this. Okay, this is an internal struggle that that puts the self through, whenever it's triggered, one of the harshest transits that a person could literally go through at once, which is Saturn opposing Uranus, with Uranus is his first house, and Saturn opposing Pluto with Pluto in his first house. It's a powerful persona. And the power of persona is not by the ego, but actually by the many the trials of perseverance that this person had to go through, and his Mars in a very, it's not a cardinal because Taurus is a fixed sign. This is kind of a cardinal degree of Scorpio. Very potent chart. Sun with Denebal Gedi, Jupiter on Procyon, It's the kind of person that will be spoken about for years. And when I did his natal chart analysis, I said there's something definitely in the seventh house, and I said we should be interested about who is he working with, partners and enemies as head of NATO. And I said, well, it's also personal life, but I'm not going to give reading for that because it's not of our business. A week later, a movie came out. Trailer came out. I think the movie hasn't come out yet, which is a documentary that also talks about his love life and personal life. So that was kind of very fascinating. So we have both the midheaven being targeted by Uranus, which is going to give yet another personal revolution into this point, but also an approaching Saturn return. That this is, if for Kim Jong-un, I said this is the Pluto square of a century, this is the second Saturn square of a century, okay? You want to be watching this. You want to be watching all my videos about the Corvan Hout, which is the Saturn-Pluto transit. Only for him, he doesn't get this remediation from the moon, okay? And his moon doesn't get supported either, okay? Supported by the sun, and Badel and Algadir squares Jupiter, and it opposes Mars. The Jupiter square is not what bothers me that much. The Mars opposition, okay, is a very kind of harsh aspect for the moon. The sun is more supported here, but she squares Neptune, which is okay. It is navigating a lot of challenges that seem to be impossible. He does have Uranus and Pluto retrograde. It's not a lot of retrogrades, okay? It's not a lot of retrogrades for this chart, and this actually might even be a little bit to the detriment, because when you have so many challenges and everything moving direct, but Pluto and Uranus moving retrograde, it means that facing this challenge is extra hard because you're not used to the retrograde pattern around these two planets, and these are intergenerational planets. So most astrologers will tell you, well, they don't really affect you, they don't really that. Well, they affect your Saturn return, and you never learned how to do that completely and make peace with the retrograde planet. So that can be an even more difficult crisis, because he's after his Saturn maturation, after first Saturn return. It's not going to be as difficult as, and after Pluto square, it's not going to be as difficult as previous transits, because but he should be looking at where was I 28, where was I 35, 36, having Uranus Pluto in the first house. Very likely he's an astrologer, okay? So he's actually better at what I do for him than me, simply because his greatest power, personal power, and his Mercury is in the seventh house here, so he's also a relational astrologer, okay? And so I'm ascendant Pisces, and my ascendant is right conjunct in his Chiron, in between his Chiron and his Saturn. So that is very, very, very powerful. And because we're also seeing the seventh house, there's a lot of things that he's going to be addressing. I think he already knows that the 1996 Brussels Mark Decroix, he will be addressing that. I don't think that that this comes as a big surprise to him. And he must remember that when it comes, Saturn rules taxation, Saturn rules time. So when it comes to taxes, when there was the taxes crisis around children in Netherlands, Saturn, Jupiter, children, Saturn, taxes, he couldn't smooth this over so much. He had to resign, but he gets the boot upstairs, okay? He had to resign because he was going to be head of NATO. But Saturn also rules time. And when I say karma, I mean just the accumulation of our actions, okay? Is a sort of a karma, okay? And so we say, but surely that people never face karma. Yes, this is true. People never face karma in their life. And some people go all the way to incarnation to that. We are having a reset to how we see karma with Pluto in Saturn sign, and it's going to be more flexible in Aquarius. It's the times in where in biblical time, which is basically secret society times, that they were changing for the moralities of the children are suffering from the teeth of the children go sour from the actions of the father, like Gen Z and us, where the A bomb and the industrial revolution still affects our teeth health, but it's also for when we correct for things, which is Pluto Aquarius. And this is the time where they say, in these times, no longer will children suffer from the sins of their parents. Why? Because the children's change. That. And here we have a karma to do with children. And that is sweetened by the fact that Ruto himself grew into satanic ritual abuse. And with the grace of Lars, if I had his chart and permission to look at it, I would. Probably the most important key figure in the Netherlands with Trudy Verstegen. And this is the testimony of survivor of abuse by both Rutte and Wilders, that was witnessing the fact that Wilders and Rutte also went through satanic ritual abuse themselves as children. So there's definitely something that kind of sweetens the verdict here, because we want to tend to abolishing the entire project of using children and human sacrifice in that way. And that's more important than to do something to carry out justice that is actually a form of misjustice to the children that's still in there. It's divert the attention to one person, but it doesn't serve as any detriment to any other, because the children are growing into that and they actually don't even have access to that. Adolf Hitler had to sign to do the Holocaust basically, but also the World War, and he had cyanide. He wouldn't be able to get his hand on cyanide without complying in that way, because he was not intelligence agent per se. He was given that, okay, and the cults are memento mori cults. They're death cults. In Netherlands, Mark Rutte's party was the Ministry of Justice, and also, but the Ministry of Justice is also ruling over the process of legal assisted suicide and the many medical processes of that. So the pro is that if you went through incest and abuse and rape, you can have assisted suicide if it wasn't by, if you don't talk. Okay, if you don't talk, basically, well, in fact, you could be cured if you had housing first and the ability to speak up and be believed and not be executed for it. So it's basically a form of execution that you get the grace if you don't talk. And so that is something kind of to keep in mind. And because Saturn rules time, then the fact that he has a second Saturn return, and he knows this. I'm not telling him anything new. He's probably better astrologer than me. He's been doing that for way more years than I was doing that, very likely. Even if he started in a Saturn return or maturation, I'm 40, he is, yes, he's 57. So at least got 4 of 17 years on me in my own scale. Let's say if he gave himself a 656, then I would give myself a -2 about being an astrologer analyzing this. That means he knows way more than I do. And definitely this is basics that he's ready to deal with, and he's already got a plan. That plan might be a nuclear holocaust, might not, I don't know. But this is the times where Teflon Mark cannot smooth it over, is just these times where we tend to children combined with taxation or time, okay, with Jupiter combined with Saturn. So I am, first of all, I'm humbled what by this life journey of this person. And I'll definitely be observing Manirute as the years go. Okay, as the years go. Now, a chart that is impossible not to talk about. I should be having this. I don't know if I kept it or not. It's Kamala Harris. Um, Kamala Harris natal chart. And Kamala Harris, she has the Jupiter on Algol. Where is your Jupiter? Oh, she has the Jupiter on Algol in the 12th house. Now, yes, Rao is going through her, and Aries is about to go on her moon. So she's an interesting figure. She's going to be interesting figure towards the 2030. As you can see here, her Rao 25 degrees next to the ascendant in Gemini, a Ketu in Sag. She's the same Rao as Donald Trump, but different degrees, okay, different nakshatras, I think, as well. And this is the 2030 log, okay? So if you bring together me, Trump, and her, we kind of like we complete the entire Gemini, the entire 2030 axis, and with the same Rahu, okay? So I don't know, I don't know where it's heading. I don't know. We are all purging the old religions and doing things in some ways that they are doing it from within the cult. And she's not an eclipse child. Although her ascendant is very close to being an eclipse child, I would consider her eclipse child as well because of this ascendant, okay? She's not born within eclipses, but with this ascendant so close to the nodes, her life is so fitted that she's very much like an eclipse child. So neither Kamala Harris or Donald Trump could be fully controlled, nor can, like, she is the definition of a person where you can't get her life back because she herself had to surrender it. Okay, and that is, I'm a pre-eclipse child, but for her, she is ascendant with Rahu, even if she's not eclipse child. This is so interesting because Donald Trump is eclipse child, I'm pre-eclipse child, she's ascendant Rahu in Gemini, and all are fated. You can't control either, neither can control themselves. My life path, I've surrendered it. It's just something so interesting about this. And that's the 2030 squad. Okay, anybody with displacements of Rahu Ketu on Gemini and Sag are the 2030 squads. Okay, and the people that are called to talk about this, that are called to Plato, and we've been in that since childhood. Okay, in one way or another, whether you grew up in the cult or whether you grew up outside of the cult, but you're not growing up too much outside the egregore. So that is something that I remember when I was 12, 13, when I was looking at Trump, and I saw this, I remember the prenuptial one, where he talked about divorces. And I looked at this as a child and I said, it's very reasonable for people to divide assets, but women need to have equity. We need, and I didn't know that women don't have equity, and they don't have equality financial. I had no idea about this. And that governed the most choices that I made in my life. And so for Kamala Harris, I was like, she's not an eclipse child. She's probably picked by the cult to do this, to do that. But no, she is here with ascendant. These are people that overcome the matrix, not by trying, but just because it's kind of like, hey, you can, why do I keep saying to you, was it Abraham Lincoln who said that? You can control, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. And I keep saying you, this is the time in the tale, this is the time in the tales of the time where they try to control for all the people all the time. Of course, it's going to break down. It's very interesting. So Kamala Harris chart, this Jupiter, okay, Jupiter Uranus, She's now having a transit of Jupiter-Uranus, and in Jupiter-Uranus, when we have it natally in the chart, we had it for what was it? Steve Jobs. We had it for people that are creating some new technology that is associated with worldview. Okay, it's a philosophy of life would change the way people see the world. Jupiter-Uranus is just Jupiter-Uranus just bees like that, okay? And she's having it not as a natal chart, but she's having it in a transit. So her worldview is liberated. Her worldview on children is liberated. I don't know this woman. I don't know what she's up to, but she's definitely playing a critical role here that I would not underestimate. It's another form of yoga. And mind you, the two symbolism, some look at it as peace or victory or this or that, also stands for two genders. So you see people doing the two genders, and this is very much the two spirit, except that they try to create the two spirit artificially, okay? And that is the hermaphrodite. And they try to cancel sexual polarity. This in fact stirs up a nuclear holocaust, which increases sexual polarity. So but again, if we either have been, oh, saying two spirit is cultural appropriate, why do you train your shamans in a way that you rape them and you torture them and you put them through hell, and then this is the one shaman in the tribe that can heal you, and you dependent on them? If you had to depend in a tribe on me and Itamar Yaron when I was going to therapy, but this was also about my psychologist, my astral partner, my enemy later, and the person that would be kind of like a supervisor, because when I was trying to assist people, when they were changing for the shifts of the healing modalities, I had no one to turn to. So I would talk to him, this happened today in my group, this happened today in my group. But then he went kind of against, because he was supposed to be assassinating me, okay? And then he got sexually addicted, like really fucked up stuff. So if entire community was dependent on either me or him, okay, when I was trained by this person who molested, who every time I would come to a point where I have joy, and he would destroy it, and even if when I walk out and this one and so on. So if you had to depend on me, you depend on a person that took responsibility to heal the relational trauma and was seeing a person who perpetuates trauma for them. As he told me, okay, I don't know how to heal trauma, I know how to create it. And this is the most authentic statement he had, because the minute he heals something, he begins to break it down. And it's his life, okay? It's not something against me. I feel a role in his life. I feel an X in an equation. But what you need is to change for this equation. You need to abolish this satanic ritual abuse, to abolish that. And you have like altars that say the show, and then altar comes assassinate. Okay? So two spirits are also your leaders, your musicians, your all these people. The way we train them is the way what we harvest, which is a nuclear holocaust. And if you think that modern medicine is better in that way, no, because the average medicine student is practicing dream state because he cannot have life. He's working entire day, cannot have life, so they practice dream state, so he doesn't have a night's sleep as well. So they never actually get to do medicine. They don't get to think about what they're doing. They don't get to rest. And you get the weirdest reactions from the medical team. And you're like, I can't judge them for it, but I definitely cannot apply to their medicine, because otherwise I'll be dead. In torture, mind you. So here we have worldview around fertility, around children, around the philosophy. Venus here is in Virgo with Pluto. Philosophy of power, philosophy of the way women, children and the power of women, fertility and the power of women, many things. So there's a lot to this woman. Um, and this is, and she's again of the Pluto-Uranus, okay, for the Pluto-Uranus generation. So the electrocution, that she's again this true spirit, okay, this hermaphrodite that's been electrocuted, this, that, and that's what she knows. And she's being forced to perpetuate that, but there is a fate here that goes against for the where Ra will be in 2030. Both Trump and Kamala Harris and your distinguished broadcaster go against for the Ra of 2030. What will it be? I don't know. But I tell you, when Pluto was at the point of position to the point it's at, which is the evolution from point for Pluto where it's right now, so humanity right now evolving to where she was in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I don't know. I really don't know. But then we're going to the golden ages. So it's not sure. It's like either way, we're going to the golden ages. Either it's going to be through a nuclear war, or people are going to actually change. And I said it with zero blame, because change is something that we have doors that open up to, and we have transits and we open up. And so then one choice is accessible to us where we didn't see it before and weren't getting the conditions to even think, and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that with blame towards humanity. I'm just like, hey, let's just hope we do it. We managed to do it without nuclear war, because to get to these insights is challenging. Okay. And even humanity extinction, those are very real things. So this is yet another chart that I'll be looking at, both for the Uranus on Algol. Yes, Ra is going towards her 11th house. So people are like, yeah, maybe she's going to be like head of state and so on and so forth. It's not impossible, okay? And the ruler of the 11th is in the 3rd. It means she's something she tends to daily. But is squaring that Jupiter, okay? So I don't know. We'll see. The Sun Moon opposition, she's a full moon child. So there's something that is blooming to fruition. Okay, she's bringing something to completion. And I tell you, it's not going to be Agenda 2030. It's not going to be, because she has Ketu and Berawet with 2030. So she's not bringing 2030 to completion. And the Sun is not too far from Spica as well. She has an moon on Andromeda. She's bringing something to completion. Mars is remediatory for this moon and sun. And Mars is malefic of sect. So that's a stronger planet. She's bringing something into completion. I don't know what it is. She could be bringing war into completion, which could both mean peace or breaking of a war. And again, I'm not saying like, oh, she's on our side, she's this, she's that. I have no idea. She has no idea. It's fated. What's going to happen with her is fated. And the Pisces axis will accentuate on the natal axis for everyone for the 2030, but for her, she's having it in the natal. So 2025, 2026 are also big for Kamala Harris. And that's something I wouldn't ignore. She has a midheaven conjuncting her Mars out of sign and next to Fomalhaut. So deep psychic intuition, again, with this Jupiter. Jupiter is in her 12th house. So, and Venus is in her 4th. So that can be presidency, because the White House is so secluded. That can also be jail and hospital. Definitely a chart I will be looking at, and she's definitely more of an eclipse child behavior than others. I think the eclipse children are kind of like fatedly uniting, because The eclipse children of 2030 eclipse cycle are kind of like uniting fatedly, because we have a role to play. So whether it's from astrology or whether it's from politics or whether it's from army, or I don't know, that is, yeah, quite fascinating. So those are charts that I'm looking at kind of for the coming year, that I'll be observing. Um, let's see if we got something more that I missed with Kamala Harris. Well, Neptune is going to go into Aries. What's Pluto doing in her chart? Pluto is leaving her 8th house and onto the 9th house. So with Saturn in the 9th house. So again, she is going from being hidden to being public. That means that Pluto, yes, will give her powers in international politics arena. So she's going to play an important role. That being said, I would not turn my gaze away from Donald Trump either, because within politics, within business, none of that. Okay, and the Eclipse children, you say they're just presenters, they're just did. No, 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 no. When it's the Eclipse role here, there is something way bigger than that, and way bigger than the life of the native itself. I would not take any of that lightly. Um, and and fertility is also an issue here. Okay, the attempts to control fertility, um, and the intricacies, and again, it's a very good chart, AA rate. So all very good charts, except, and Wilder said his birthday literally, but he does not reveal ascendant, which is his right to. So that is basically, and Kim Jong-un does not reveal ascendant, which is again his right to. So this data is very likely to be very accurate. So those are the charts that I would be looking at. Fascinating that it took the power of three, okay, the 3 attempts to get this one going. All are very, very public figures. All have a role to do with the changing of very much entire society. And yes, it's just something that wants. Okay. So, and we also must consider the charts that we don't have. Trump is the closest. One more chart I would look at. I haven't checked Quasiatatio's video about this, but one more chart I would look as is Elon Musk. When it comes to currency. So just in terms of the transit, I know he's been on for quite a while. Round Ketu in the 8th house, yes, with this Mars trine Venus. Aries is about to go on his midheaven. It's going for Elon Musk, it's a couple of decades, because Aries is about to go in his midheaven with this Mars in the 8th house, correct? So that means that the potency, okay, now I got it. Aries rules the Ubermensch practice, the creation of hermaphrodite, trying to create a superhuman. Aries also rules those who are marginalized in society. With the role of getting this cooperation with Donald Trump here, although in the 8th house is a house of betrayal, unless we manage to abolish expandable children, it's going to be betrayal here. And that's important. Um, and Saturn here is in the 12th house in Gemini sign, Gemini's children, whereas Mercury in the ascendant of Elon. So the challenge here is how to be inclusive when you're basically recruited to be the presenter of the economy of the superhuman, of the country of the superhuman, of the Ubermensch, and to even break through that, you actually had to be a superhuman. Okay, I'm humbled by what I've been through and am dealing with, and imagine people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and so on, when it comes to managing resources on a worldly level and even an extraterrestrial or alien level. So for the people that are like, oh, are these people reptilian? Are these people this? Are these people that? Or, I don't know. Like, even if they are, then they're people. Okay, even if they are, then there's still something we need to tend to. The good thing is that for this Mercury in ascendant is that he has the power of Sirius, and that's something that's very useful. Aries is not the one go. Okay, Sedna is conjuncting his Saturn, and my Chiron. so, um, so that is, let's say it's a big crisis. He has some time before his second Saturn return. It's a Saturn opposing Neptune, and Saturn is now going through the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is going to sextile his Saturn. So there is potential for a mediation for Elon, but I would go even beyond that. Like this is yes, and he grew up from families where astrology, not just technology, was in. He uses technology. Okay, he launched X.com. Everybody is doing the algol tricks. It's very important to tend to algol, okay, not archaically and so on. He knows that, um, and it's the same Uranus generation of, oh my God, now people are going to hate me. And I don't know Mr. Musk enough to say that without, I don't know how he would get that if I said it, because if I just said what the other chart that this is relating to, I don't know what reaction, if we steer the reaction would be so strong that there would be no rational talk after that, so I'm not going to say that. But this is the Venus ruled Uranus. I'm going to talk about Venus ruled Uranus in another episode. I will have to make it a couple of episodes so people wouldn't understand that this is related. Okay, I've lost this game. You know who had Uranus in Libra, right? So the thing is that yes, he's meant to change, and this is doing for housing, for vehicles. He has these pyramidal safety vehicles and stuff like that for finances. But he comes from lineage of astrologers, and he's also rebelling of his own home. He also has, this relation with the children and so on. So a lot of fascinating things that come to this, but note that this Uranus is squaring his ascendant. Okay, my Uranus in conjunct his ascendant, so I'm also not good astrologer for him. You would need Uranus. People of the generation of Uranus in mid-decan of Taurus could be great astrologers for him. The Virgo, okay, but the Virgo, I know is doing good cooperation with people like Wilders is very competent for him. The Pisces generation of astrologers can be good, and the Scorpio generation of astrologers can be good. In the middle phase, I'm just like an inconjunct. It's just like, it's not really okay. And the Urano Aquarius, which is very strong, is good for his Mars, but is not so good for the ascendant. So that is something I would pay attention to. As a natal person with moon in conjunct my own Uranus, I have moon right where his ascendant is. I can say that this has been a journey. Okay. And he has the square. So, but I would take a look. I take a look. It's not definitely for this Uranus for the closer readings. He does that, and I'm also not the best astrologer to do that. But in relation to this natal chart, but for Aries, okay, and you must take into account when was Aries was squaring his ascendant and his sun at time of birth. This gives me a person, and I know I had the eye on Elon, not on Elon Musk. Like I didn't. It's not like I was watching his interviews or just like that, which could have misled people around because I give this example of the many times he had to try before he did like PayPal. But the Aries square sun and the Aries square ascendant, it means that he does come to bring something to society, which we have a hard time assessing. It's kind of like the aspect of Albert Einstein that was taking a look at quantum mechanics and it's like that cannot be. Okay, so I think he may have aspect of that even with himself sometimes. And I cannot be of help because my moon is there, so it's like I'm not really useful, and it's difficult for me to genuinely see like what's going on. But I noticed that I cannot not notice Mr. Musk because he come to do something that we don't yet understand as society. He grew within the cults. Okay, he grew into this expandable children projects. Of course, there are survivors to say this person raped me, this person tortured me. They would treat these women like that. That's the cult he grew up into. Okay, and I suspect his role was breeder. So from his perspective, he's basically been targeted by the cult to breed a lot of Elons because they saw the quality that he brings. Okay, that's connected with Aries and the superhuman. He may have even Chiron Aries. I don't know. I have Aries next to Chiron, so which is funny because I take a look at Aries. Damn. So there's definitely something, but because humanity, they either see him as this big idol because he can't really talk about that facet, or they say, oh, he's totally like a slave. And so no, this is a person who's a breeder and he managed to improve upon his condition as breeder. And there's just a lot of ongoings that are going to be very relevant for the Aries transition between Aries and Taurus. He's going to be one of the leading roles in the culmination of that. I definitely think he's going to found a country because he's going there, okay, with the technology, with the housing, with the cars, with the finances, with the politics, and there's just something that he comes to bring to the world that we can't really assess just yet, that is on both social, political, and economic level, and intergalactic and scientific level. So there's a lot to this man. We really need to learn about the Ubermensch to understand, and I think he's probably doing that, but Elon needs to get every bit of information about entire Aries in Aries. I will say it because one of the biggest symbolism of the time was Nazi era, and because Hitler was one of the symbolism. And yes, Hitler has Libra, Uranus, Venus ruled Uranus, and we at the time of when Hitler was the 1939 to 1946. I remind you, before Adolf Hitler was known as Hitler, he managed to move Germany from economic collapse of the post-First World War to economic prosperity, and then he did not know how to take it next level because he wanted to fight the banking system, but he also had to apply with the cult. He also needed cyanide because it's death cults, mind you. So that there's something going on there. And indeed, if Hitler died in 1936, he would be considered greatest leader of all time. That's in some way that I don't have the ability to say in what way, because I don't see him clearly. We have a Neptune Sun hard aspect, which means we don't see each other clearly. So that's something that I feel is very relevant for Musk. Um, not in any direct sinistrial way. It's not like he has a synastry with Hitler that I can denote of like by first glance or something. Um, but definitely with the spirit of the times, and he's launching X.com during the Urano algol, and he's within the culture, just things that he can do and things he can talk about and things he cannot talk about. The Urano algol is not pinpointing anything right now, but the Uranus Sedna will. So think about Inuit society and technology and the infanticide and child sacrifice there. That was not good. So it's really a dissonance between, to combat the wrongdoings of the Ubermensch and the superhuman level competence thingy. You have to be a superhuman in a way without the Ubermensch project, which is a big dissonance that I'm dealing with. Definitely Elon is dealing with himself in his own way, which I can't clearly see. Okay, and that is something that I would be definitely looking at. And it's Neptune time, so I believe that with time we will see, especially with Saturn opposing Neptune, with time we will see what is it that's been going on. But with the hard aspects to Aries from the ascendant from Mercury as kind of ruling over his moon, his Pluto, but also a lot of fortune, then there is just something that he came to bring to the world that is through a crisis. And this crisis, I must tell you, is personal, not is internal, not just external. So Aries is the social revolutionary. It is a person that changes really for the way we are. And Aries in Aries is that Ubermensch thingy. So yeah, very, very fascinating chart. Um, I would need to see other astrologers analyze this because of the synastry. Okay, the synastry simply has hard aspect to Neptune, um, and that makes it difficult for me to clearly what's going on there. But definitely the Aries, and this is a chart I would not be looking at like for the next year or so, but the next couple of decades. So yeah, see you in another video. Bye bye.